It's the second half of 2021. Do you have vacation days you have to use or lose? Do you have travel money burning a hole in your pocket? Hi, I'm Ashley with J&A Travel Adventures, and today in this video, I'm going to tell you step by step how to plan international travel in this era of COVID. Here is our bucket list. And the reason I say dust off your list is there's a very good chance that your first or second choice of destination just won't be open to tourists at this time, or will not be open to tourists from your nationality. With that said, 75 countries as of July 2021 were accepting tourists. So there's a very good chance that you will find a destination on your bucket list. It may be your second, third, or fourth choice, but you can still plan an amazing trip. Just have to find a country that's willing to take you. Now that you've got your list of possible destinations, it's time to start doing your research for COVID requirements. Each country that's accepting tourists is having different requirements for the world in general, as well as different nationalities for COVID testing, quarantine, and mask procedures. Many of these countries are also giving special treatment to people that have already gotten their vaccine. So if you haven't gotten your vaccine, this might be a good time to do that, because with having a vaccine, it opens up a lot more countries for destinations for you, and it reduces the things like need for quarantine. Below in the comments, I will list for you 2 places that I have found very helpful for my research of the COVID requirements. One is the Center for Disease Control in the United States, and one is the Health Organization. I also highly recommend you check in your own governing body in your own national country to see if they give you requirements that you were not seeing in other countries where you might be going. In the past, step 3 has been for me that you choose the sites you want to see and the activities you want to do while in the chosen country. For me now, step 3 is the same, just with a little bit of a twist. Now you're still choosing the sites you want to see and the attractions you want to visit, but you're also needing to confirm if they're open and if they're operating a method that you're still going to find enjoyable. For example, I'm working on a trip right now to St. Kitts, and one of the things I want hubby and I to do was a pirate tour and rum tasting. Well, I've contacted the operator, and they're still doing the pirate tour part, but they're not doing the rum tasting. So instead, I'm looking at us going snorkeling instead. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe down below and hit the alarm bell so you'll know when I'm posting a lot more fun videos like this and of the places that we'll be visiting soon. Whew. You now made it through all that COVID research, and it's now step 4, which is where I find things fun. This is where you've chosen your destination and you're ready to find your resort that's going to help you make your memories and the airlines that's going to get you there. So this is where you start booking things the way you had in the past. One thing to note is that I found when I was just booking for our last trip to the Maldives was that I usually check the prices on entities like Expedia and Travelocity, and many times they've got really great prices on packages or on resorts. Well, one thing I found was I went ahead and went to Cinnamon Don Valley in the Maldives and checked their resort directly. One thing I found with them, and I'm finding this with a lot of other things that I'm trying to book right now, is that the price I'm getting directly from the resort is the same price as I'd get, or right at the same price I get from like Travelocity. But the difference is when I'm going directly with the resort, they're throwing in a lot more free things. Like Cinnamon Don Valley gave us a couple's dinner on the beach, they gave us a couple massage, and they gave us 2 sets of excursions, which made the value of booking directly with them significantly better. Another thing to think about whenever you are doing your bookings is the requirements of COVID for the resort and for the airline itself. We just flew from the United States to Mali via Qatar Airlines. which was great and a wonderful experience. But in doing that, we had to have an earlier PCR test for Qatar Airways, not for Mali. So make sure that you check back to your step 3 when you did your COVID research. Now do COVID research to check your airlines on their websites and check your resorts to see whether they're going to have a requirement that the country did not, which makes them more strict than the country is. Another thing to think about when you're booking is that this is the time, because of COVID, and we all know traveling is going to be affected by COVID, that you might want to think about doing some upgrades that you might not normally pay for. For example, the Cinnamon Don Valley, when we were in the Maldives, we originally had planned on just doing a water bungalow. But when we saw that the water bungalow was 70 units altogether, or we could spend a little bit more and get an overwater suite that put us in an area that's only 24 units and a lot more spread out, we chose to go that way. So we got a lot more space. The same thing with your airlines. Singapore Air, Qatar Air, Emirates, a lot of those airlines in their business class now have pods. And normally I'm the person that's all about flying premium economy. Let's just get there and I'll spend my money on the destination. But in the era of COVID, if you're flying airlines, like I said, that has the pod system at the business airlines, really take a look at booking that instead, because in the pod, you're more isolated and away from other people. Step 5 is all about protecting your trip and protecting you while you're on your trip. I am actually a person that usually does not do travel insurance. But with that being said, in the era of COVID, where sometimes countries in the middle of trips are changing their requirements, or heaven forbid you test positive and you need a quarantine situation, or flights are being canceled because there's not enough pilots to fly them, I really recommend going ahead and researching and buying your travel insurance for this trip. There's many entities out there that will allow you to bundle a travel insurance policy that allows you to cover a purchase of an airline from this trip and a resort from this resort, and put it all together underneath one cost. In doing that, pay very close attention. In doing that, just don't take somebody's word when you're buying the policy of, oh yeah, we cover anything related to COVID. Make sure you read the fine print and you make sure you've got in writing that if quarantine happens or if a flight gets disrupted because of a COVID situation, that they are going to cover it. In that same vein, this is where you dot your I's and cross your T's with your airlines and resorts and make sure you know their refund policy. If something happens, if you don't get to make it to a trip, make sure if you know whether they're going to give you credit or if they're going to give you your money back, and if that associates with service fees and how long it would take. So in step 5, this is where you're protecting yourself to make sure you've got insurance and you're very clear and in writing on all of your refunds if heaven forbid that you need to get one. So take care of yourself and make sure in step 5 that you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. Step number 6 is contingent on your step number 3. Step number 6 is all about your COVID testing plan. It is going to be very unusual if you are flying to anywhere overseas that you are not at some point going to need to have a PCR test or proof of vaccine for a country, a resort, or an airlines. I mean, in this day and age, every time I turn around, I'm taking a PCR test for something. So it's not like it's a big deal. You just need to know how many hours beforehand, how long it's going to take to get a COVID test whenever you take it. Like in Mali, when we took our COVID test, they came back in 8 to 12 hours. Here in the United States, when we took our COVID test, it took 2 days to get the results back. So make sure when you're doing step number 6 and doing your COVID plan, as I call it, that you know where you're going to get your test from. Have it in writing if a resort is going to be taking care of it. Schedule as many of your COVID tests before you leave your home and know how much they're going to cost you and who is going to take your money. Many resorts will do a direct pay to the person doing your test and they're going to put it on your bill. But I've now heard recently of some of them who the people taking the test want to be paid in cash at that moment. So make sure you know how you're going to pay for it. Another thing to think about if you're an American citizen making an international plan, we came across that Abbott Laboratories has a rapid PCR test that's being sold here in the States and is accepted for return back to the United States. So every time we're traveling international now, this is our plan B. We've purchased these tests and we're taking them with us. The 2 stipulations for American citizens using this test is 1, you got to purchase it here in the States and they overnight it to your house before you leave. And 2 is that you have to put the app that you're going to use to do the test on every person's phone who is going to be doing the test. So make sure you do that if you're an American citizen, because the U.S. government will accept this one rapid PCR test if you cannot get a PCR test done in the country you're returning from. Okay, so you've made it through steps 1 through step 6, and now you have a country chosen, you have your COVID testing requirements and your mask requirements and your quarantine requirements for your airlines, your resorts, and your countries completely figured out, and you understand them. You also have booked your airline and your resort, and you have your plan for your COVID, whatever your COVID responsibilities are as you're going to the country and coming home from the country. Now, step 7 is the most important step right now at this point because you've done so much work. Step 7 is take a real big breath, realize your trip is planned and you're gonna get to go. So get online, look at all those pretty pictures of where you're going to go, and just know you're going to get to travel. And I wish you well.